They say you always remember your first love, right? Like a sweet, faded photograph in the dusty album of your mind. The first awkward kiss, the first "I love you" whispered with a trembling voice. It's toothachingly sweet. Mine said he loved me, too. He loved my smile. My laugh. The way I wrinkled my nose when I was concentrating. He even said he loved the way I slept, curled up in a ball, like a kitten. It was so romantic. At least, I thought it was. The problem is, he didn't just remember how I slept. He watched it. Every night. In real time, he wasn't keeping my image in his memory. He was keeping it on a hard drive. I was his favorite movie. His personal reality show, starring a clueless idiot. A private stream for an audience of one. And the funniest part? I had no idea. I thought I was being loved. But I was just being watched. So. Let's rewind the tape. Back to the very beginning. To where it all seemed perfect. Before I go on, this is my story. But I know I'm not the only one. If any of this has already struck a chord with you, if you recognize even an echo of your own experience, just hit the like button. So I know I'm not just talking into the void. And if you have a story to tell, remember that the comments below are a space where you'll be heard. Sometimes, just writing it down is the first step to taking back your own voice. I was 16. The age when your brain is a bubbling cauldron of hormones, self-doubt, and the conviction that no one in the world understands you. Especially your parents. My social status in the school hierarchy was somewhere between the girl who returns her library books on time and Ascension houseplant. I wasn't an outcast, no. I was background scenery. Part of the set against which the real teenage dramas unfolded. I didn't dream of a prince on a white horse. I was too deep for that. I read Remarque and thought true love had to be a tragedy, involving Calvados and a view of nighttime Paris. In reality, my biggest adventure was a bus ride to the mall in the next town over, and then, Leo appeared. He was older. 18, a senior, and he had the aura of a bored genius, as if all this high school drama was profoundly beneath him. He didn't walk, he sort of floated through the hallways, always with headphones on, a copy of Nietzsche under his arm, and an expression that said he just solved the mysteries of the universe and was disappointed by the answer. He looked like the lead singer of an indie band that was too cool to actually release any music. For a 16-year-old who considered herself an intellectual, he was the jackpot. How We Met was a textbook predator and prey scenario, disguised as a romantic comedy. I was standing in the school parking lot in a drizzling rain, cursing everything. Because my bus had apparently decided to leave for a better life without me. My hair was stuck to my face, my mascara was running, and the chemistry textbook in my backpack felt like it weighed a ton. The perfect moment for a fateful encounter. A well-kept, older car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and there he was. Leo. Getting wet? He asked with a lazy smirk, as if the rain was a special effect he'd turned on just for this scene. Lie. Think I mumbled something in reply that sounded more like a drowning kitten. Get in, I'll give you a ride. It's on my way. On his way where? He lived in a gated community on the other side of town, and I lived in a standard apartment block where the main entertainment was watching the neighborhood cats. But my brain shut down all logic at that moment. An older guy. A car. Attention. That was enough. The car smelled like coffee and something vaguely emasculine, not cheap deodorant, but something like old books and self-confidence. Some melancholic music with a female vocalist was playing, something I'd of course never heard before. You're Anya, right? From 10B, he asked, not taking his eyes off the road. I nodded, shocked that he even knew my name. To me, he was a star. And I was a nameless planet in the backwaters of the galaxy. You're always so quiet. Observing everyone. It's interesting. And that was it. The key phrase. He didn't say I was pretty. He didn't say I had a great ass. He said I was interesting. He flattered my ego, my secret desire to be more than just background, to be a mysterious observer. He hit the bullseye. The whole way, he asked questions. About the books I read. The music I listened to. He listened intently, nodded, and then said, "I thought so. You have depth. Not like these empty shells." By the time we got to my building, I was head over heels in love. Or rather, bewitched. "Thanks," I stammered, getting out of the car. He smiled. "Don't mention it. Just, be careful. The world is a pretty dangerous place for people like you." He paused, looking me straight in the eye. "I just want to protect you. I just want to protect you." That phrase became his calling card. His mantra. The excuse for everything that came later. Back then, it sounded like the noblest declaration in the world. A knight in shining armor had found his princess in her concrete tower. A couple of weeks later, he was an inseparable part of my life. He'd wait for me after school. We'd sit in coffee shops for hours while he told me about philosophy, real art, and how disappointed he was in modern society. I soaked up his every word like a sponge. He gave me books of Camus, Sartre, Kafka. No young adult fiction, God forbid. Only the real stuff. He was shaping my taste. My world and my friends. They couldn't stand him. "He's weird," my best friend Lena would say. "He looks at you like you're his property." Of course, I laughed in her face. "You're just jealous," I'd say with the arrogance of a new convert. "You don't understand our connection." The connection. Yes. He convinced me we had one. Unique, special. He told me I was different, and I believed him. Because I desperately wanted to be different. He didn't need my popularity, my beauty, or my achievements. He just needed me. My complete, unconditional devotion. I thought I'd won the lottery. Turns out, I just signed a contract I hadn't bothered to read. And the fine print, as they say, is always the most important part. If the first stage of our relationship was the trailer for a romance movie, the second was the movie itself. Except Leo was the director, and I wasn't just the lead actress, I was also the props, the set, and, as I'd find out later, the subject of 24/7 surveillance. Leo's care felt like a warm, heavy blanket. At first, it's cozy and safe. It protects you from the cold and the drafts of the outside world. But then you realize you can't move. You're lying under its weight, getting hot, you can't breathe, but you can't get the blanket off anymore. It's become a part of you. An emotional boa constrictor that doesn't squeeze sharply, but slowly, millimeter by millimeter, so you get used to the pressure and mistake the suffocation for an embrace. The first thing to go was my social circle. To be specific, Lena. My best, my one and only friend since the 3rd grade. Our friendship was built on stupid jokes, sharing pizza, and understanding each other without words. Leo didn't like that. He couldn't control what he didn't understand. It started with Lena's invitation for a sleepover. The plan was standard: horror movies, chips, and talking about everything from the new physics teacher to the existential crisis you get when you realize exams are coming up. I happily told Leo about it. He listened with the expression of a surgeon looking at a hopeless case. "A sleepover?" he asked, as if I'd suggested participating in a ritual sacrifice.
"Yeah,"
I said. "We haven't done one in ages." "Anya," he took my hand. His touch was always so weighty, calming and, at the same time, pinning me down. "Think about it. What are you going to talk about?" "Everything. Stupid stuff." "Exactly. Stupid stuff. You'll waste your time on empty talk about boys and clothes when you could be." He paused for effect, reading. Thinking. Becoming a better person. They drag you down. They don't understand your depth. The depth. My supposed depth, which he had so masterfully seen in me. It was his trump card. "Lena's not like that," I tried to argue. "She's a good person." "She's not bad," Leo graciously agreed. "She's just different. Simple. She lives in the world of Instagram and reality TV. You live in the world of Camus and Dostoevsky. You wouldn't try to mix oil and water, would you? They're different substances. They can't coexist. His words had a twisted, toxic logic that seemed like the height of wisdom to me at the time. I really did feel not like the others when I was with him. And I liked it. I canceled the sleepover, lying to Lena that I felt sick. Of course, she didn't believe me. I could hear the hurt in her voice over the phone, but I convinced myself it was just a misunderstanding. She couldn't see the big picture. She didn't know us. You did the right thing, Leo praised me that evening. You chose growth over decline. I'm proud of you. I was proud of myself. I felt like an adult who had made a difficult but correct decision. Now I realize it was just a loyalty test. And I passed it with flying colors, cutting off the first important person in my life. The wall around me grew one brick higher. The next stage was controlling my appearance. This was even more subtle. He never said, "Don't wear that." His methods were far more sophisticated. One day, I wore a new skirt. Not exactly a mini, but a bit above the knee. I felt pretty and confident in it. We were supposed to go to the movies. Leo came to pick me up. He looked me up and down, and his smile faded slightly. "Cute," he said. "Very bold." The keyword, bold. Not pretty, not it suits you. Bold. As if I were about to go skydiving. Not to a movie. You don't like it? I was already starting to feel awkward. No, of course not, he shook his head. It's just, this skirt attracts a certain kind of attention. The cheap kind. You know? Men will be looking at your legs, not your face. They'll see an object, not a person. And you are a person. You deserve more than the lustful gazes of some jerks at the movie theater. You're too elegant for that. And again, bingo. He didn't insult me. He elevated me. He didn't forbid, he protected me from the vulgar world. I stood there, blushing with a mixture of shame and pride. I felt like a silly girl who had almost made a mistake, and at the same time, a sophisticated lady whose true value only he could see. I went and changed into jeans. Long, boring, safe jeans. There, Leo smiled when I came back. Now I see you. Not just a pair of legs. I became a painting in his private gallery. A masterpiece that only the owner could see. Any other glance was considered an act of vandalism. Gradually, my wardrobe turned into a collection of gray, shapeless, intellectual clothes. I convinced myself it was my conscious choice. That I was above fashion and all that tinsel. In reality, I was just afraid of disappointing him. Afraid of seeing that shadow of a bulldog on his face. The final chord in this symphony of isolation was my Instagram. I wasn't very active on it. I'd post pictures of cats, books, autumn leaves. Sometimes a selfie, if the light was good. For me, it was a way to connect with the world, a small digital diary. One day, he saw me scrolling through my feed. "What are you doing?" "Oh, just seeing what's new." He sat next to me and looked at my phone. On the screen was a photo of a classmate with a bouquet of flowers. Dozens of likes and comments underneath. "Why do you need this?" he asked quietly, almost in a whisper. "What do you mean?" "This whole Vanity Fair. This desperate need for approval from people you barely know. Likes, comments, it's a digital drug. An illusion of attention. You put your life on public display. In exchange for empty little hearts. Why do you need that, Anya? You have me. You have a real life, real feelings. Isn't my attention enough for you?" He spoke so convincingly. So passionately. He looked into my eyes, and I felt dirty. Tacky. Addicted. As if I'd been caught doing something shameful. I I don't know, I stammered. Delete it, he said. Do it for yourself. Free yourself from this addiction. Be above it. We'll be above it together. We. That magic word. It turned his demand into our joint project. Our shared, elite refuge from the vulgar world. That night, I deleted my Instagram account. And my other social media, too. I felt an incredible sense of relief and emptiness at the same time. I had cut the last threads connecting me to my old life. I had become a digital hermit. All my news, all my communication now passed through a single filter. Through Leo. Of course, my mom started to notice things. Moms are like radar. They might not see the details, but they pick up on a change in atmosphere. Anya, why doesn't Lena come over anymore? She asked one night at dinner. We just grew up, Mom. We have different interests. And what happened to all your bright sweaters? You're dressing like a nun. I like it this way. It's called style. This Leo of yours, he's a bit too serious for his age. Does he ever smile? Mom, you don't get it. I would explode. What we have is real. It's not your childish games. It's love. Love. I truly believed that. I thought his total control was the highest form of caring. His jealousy over my time, my friends, even my thoughts, it was proof of the depth of his feelings. I wasn't in a prison. I was in an exclusive club for two, where entry was by special invitation only, and I had no idea that the membership fee for this club was my own personality. And the rules were written so that only one person ever came out on top. For the first few months of complete isolation, I was blissfully unaware. My world had shrunk to the size of my and Leo's universe. School, home, him. Everything else seemed like distant, unimportant noise. I was convinced I had reached nirvana, when in reality, I was just sitting in a soundproof room padded with his approval. But the human brain is a tricky thing. Even the most drugged, most infatuated, most self-deceiving brain will eventually start to notice glitches in the matrix. Small, insignificant details that don't fit the overall picture. Cracks in the perfect facade. The first little alarm bell rang during one of our philosophical evenings. We were in my room. I was pretending to read the Camus he'd given me, but was actually thinking about how badly I wanted a pizza with double cheese, a thought that was entirely not deep, and therefore criminal. Leo was talking about something, about existential dread and the meaninglessness of existence. I nodded in the right places. Suddenly, he stopped and said, "You shouldn't have put that old shoebox on the top shelf of the closet. It could fall on your head when you're getting something." I froze, clutching the book. That exact box, where I kept my old diaries and childhood drawings, I had shoved onto the highest, most remote shelf of my closet yesterday morning. I was home alone. I hadn't told anyone. I had almost forgotten about it myself. It was a mechanical action during a cleanup. How do you know that? I asked, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Leo shrugged with disarming nonchalance. You mentioned wanting to sort through your old things. I just assumed. I know you. I know you. His universal answer for everything. It was like a magic trick. He guessed my thoughts, predicted my actions. Before, it was amazing. We're on the same wavelength. I'd think. Now, it sent a chill somewhere in my solar plexus. It's one thing to guess I want coffee, it's another thing entirely to know the exact location of a box in my closet that he'd never seen. I chalked it up to coincidence. To his incredible insight. I really wanted to believe that, but the cracks kept appearing. One time, I was talking to my mom on the phone. She was at work, I was at home, locked in my room. We were discussing an upcoming trip to my grandmother's. Just don't forget to take your warm sweater, the blue one I gave you, Mom said. Mom, it's so itchy, I hate it, I whined into the phone. Anya. Don't be difficult, it's going to be cold there. We argued a bit more, and I finally promised I'd think about it. Leo was supposed to be at an extra class on the other side of town at the time that he came over that evening. We were drinking tea, and he suddenly said, as if out of the blue, "You know, your mom is right. Sometimes you have to sacrifice comfort for practicality. Even if you don't like something, if it's useful, you should take it." I almost choked on my tea. A coincidence? Again? He started talking about abstract things, about the philosophy of utilitarianism, but the example was too specific. Too similar to my morning conversation. "Did we talk about this?" I asked cautiously. "About what?" He looked at me with his clear, honest eyes. "About sweaters and practicality." He chuckled. "I don't think so. It was just a thought that popped into my head." "Why are you so tense? Is everything okay?" And right on cue, his signature move, deflection. He immediately surrounded me with concern. Asked if I was tired, if something had happened at school. He was so attentive, so loving, that I felt guilty. Paranoid. I was looking for trouble where there was none. He just had a really good feel for me. Too good. Anxiety started to take root. It wasn't a state of panic, but a quiet, background hum. A constant feeling that I wasn't alone. When I changed clothes in my room, I felt like I was being watched. I started drawing the curtains more tightly. When I was home alone, I'd listen to every creak. The house, which had always been my fortress, no longer felt safe. The creepiest episode happened a couple of weeks later. I had a horrible day at school. I got a C on an algebra test that, frankly, I'd blown off because I spent all my free time with Leo or reading the literature he'd assigned me. I came home upset, angry at myself, at the teachers, at the whole world. I went into my room, threw my backpack on the floor, and, absolutely certain I was alone, hissed into the void, "I hate this stupid math. I'm an idiot, just an idiot." Then. I flopped onto my bed, buried my face in a pillow, and cried a little from helplessness and self-pity. No one saw it. No one heard it. It was my pathetic little secret. An hour later, Leo arrived. He came into the room, and I tried to act like everything was fine. But he looked at me and said, "You shouldn't beat yourself up over some test." I froze. The blood drained from my face. "What? You're not an idiot, Anya. Algebra just isn't your thing. It's a dry, soulless system of numbers. It has nothing to do with real intelligence. You're above that." He couldn't have heard that. He couldn't have known. There were no assumptions, or coincidences, that could explain it. I hadn't texted him. Hadn't called. None of our mutual acquaintances, of which we had almost none left, could have told him. It was impossible. "Leo." I swallowed hard. "How did you know what I said?" Not a muscle twitched on his face. He came over, sat next to me on the bed, and hugged me. "I don't know what you said. I just see that you're upset about school. And I feel your insecurity. I told you, we're connected. I feel it when you're down." Gaslighting. In its purest, most distilled form. He was denying the obvious and making me out to be the crazy one who misunderstood everything. And I almost believed him. Almost. But in that moment, the seed of doubt planted by the stories of the box and the sweater finally sprouted. A sprout of cold, clammy terror. I hugged him back, but my body was made of wood. I stared over his shoulder at my room. At the bookshelves. The ventilation grate near the ceiling. The little teddy bear on my desk that he had given me. All these familiar, cozy things suddenly seemed alien. Hostile. I felt like they had eyes. I didn't feel safe anymore. I felt like an exhibit under glass. And I desperately started looking for a crack in that glass, just to get a breath of fresh air. I didn't know what I was looking for yet. But I knew I had to find it. Because otherwise, I would simply go insane. The universe, apparently, has a twisted sense of humor. It throws the perfect storm at you precisely when you're least prepared for it. In my case, the perfect storm was a combination of my mom being away and my escalating paranoia. My mom left for 3 days, some urgent work conference in another city. Before, this would have been a gift from heaven, freedom, no need to do the dishes, and watching movies until midnight. But now, the empty apartment didn't feel like freedom, but like a huge, echoing stage where I was the only actor, lit by a spotlight. And the audience was hiding somewhere in the darkness. Leo, of course, offered to look after me. "I can stay over, so you won't be lonely or scared," he said, with the air of a noble savior. I used to cling to offers like that like a drowning person to a life raft. But now, the very thought of him being in my house 24/7 didn't bring comfort, but a bout of claustrophobia. I lied and said my aunt promised to check on me, and that I needed to be alone to gather my thoughts. It was a weak excuse, but surprisingly, he didn't insist. He probably figured his system was working flawlessly anyway. Why be physically present when you're already in control of everything? The first night, I barely slept. I lay with the nightlight on, listening to every creak. I thought someone was standing outside my window, that a floorboard had creaked in the hallway. By morning, I was exhausted, angry at myself for my cowardice, and decided to do something that always calmed my nerves: a deep clean. If you can't tidy up your head, at least you can tidy up your room. I turned the music up loud to drown out the silence and my own thoughts, and got to work. Dusting, rearranging books, sorting through my desk drawers. The mechanical activity really helped. I almost convinced myself that all my fears were a product of my imagination, hormones, and an excessive interest in existential philosophy, and that's when it happened. I decided to dust the top of the closet, the very one where the infamous box was. To reach the top, I brought a chair. Standing on it, I reached with a cloth to the farthest corner. My hand slipped, and to keep from falling, I instinctively pressed my palm against the wall. Right on the white plastic ventilation grate. Located almost at the ceiling, the grate, which no one ever touched, shifted slightly with a soft click. Something fell from under its edge and landed on the carpet with a dull thud. I got off the chair, my heart pounding in my throat. On the floor was a tiny black cube, no bigger than my thumbnail. A thin wire stuck out of it. I picked it up. It was warm. My brain refused to process what it was. A part of something? Trash that had flown into the vent? I got back on the chair, moved the grate completely, and looked into the dark opening in the wall, and I saw a small red dot glowed. With a steady, unblinking light in the darkness of the ventilation shaft. Like the eye of the Terminator. Like a recording indicator. It was looking right at me. In that moment, the entire world shrank to that tiny red light. All sounds disappeared. The music playing from the speakers became a silent vibration. I looked at the dot, and it looked back at me. And suddenly, I understood everything. Not coincidences. Not his insight. Not our special connection. The box in the closet. The conversation about the itchy sweater. My tears over the test. Every whispered word. Every movement. It was all recorded. It was all seen. Panic didn't hit me right away. The first reaction was numbness. My brain simply refused to process this information. This can't be happening. It's some kind of mistake. It's not what I think it is. He wouldn't. He couldn't. He loves me. He's protecting me. With trembling hands, I put the grate back in place. I got off the chair. I paced my room like a caged animal. My eyes darted from object to object. Each one now seemed like a potential enemy. Every single thing could be hiding another one of those eyes. The bookshelf. He helped me hang it himself. He said the books would look better that way. The teddy bear. His gift. Let him watch over you when I'm not here and remind you of me. The smoke detector on the ceiling. The clock on my desk. I started with the bookshelf. I frantically felt every plank, looked behind the spines of the books. And I found it. The second one. It was hidden more cleverly. Embedded in the edge of one of the shelves, disguised as a screw head. But I already knew what to look for. A tiny, almost invisible lens. I touched it with my finger, and my own reflection in that tiny black dot confirmed my worst fears. That's when it hit me. Not with a scream. Not with tears. But with a wave of icy, nauseating horror. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I knelt on the cold tile, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. Our whole love, all his care, all the depth of our relationship, it was all a lie. A sham. A set for his twisted one-man show. I wasn't his beloved woman. I was an object. An experiment. A pet in a terrarium, being watched by its owner. The feeling of filth was unbearable. He had seen me. He had seen me sleep. Change clothes. Cry. Pick my nose when I thought no one was looking. All my private, silly, vulnerable moments, which I thought belonged only to me, were actually content. Material for his personal archive. My life, my room, my body, none of it was mine. It was his film set. I got up from the cold bathroom floor, staggering. I went back to my room, but it wasn't my room anymore. It was a crime scene. The air felt thick and sticky. The walls that used to protect me now felt crushing, and I imagined they were made of millions of tiny eyes. I looked at the teddy bear. On my desk, Leo's gift. Its glass-bead eyes no longer seemed cute. They were empty and watchful. I grabbed it and threw it against the wall with all my might. It hit with a dull thud and fell to the floor, still staring at the ceiling. A part of my brain, desperately clinging to the last remnants of sanity, tried to find another explanation. Maybe it wasn't him? Maybe it was some crazy pervert who broke into the house while we were gone? Maybe it was the previous tenants, but I knew. I knew with a chilling certainty. No pervert neighbor could have known about my conversation with my mom about the blue sweater. No one but Leo could have quoted my own words about hating algebra, spoken in an empty room. It was him. It could only be him. All his care appeared before me in a new, ugly light. I just want to protect you. Protect me by watching my every move. That skirt attracts the wrong kind of attention. Of course, because it would have distracted from the camera angle he'd chosen. Why do you need Instagram? Isn't my attention enough for you? That question now sounded like a blatant mockery. His attention was more than enough. It was everywhere. It was all pervasive. It was toxic. The love I felt for him began to rot inside me, turning into something disgusting. His face, which had seemed to me the epitome of intelligence and nobility, now looked like a mask hiding the cold, calculating eyes of a predator. What was I supposed to do? Call my mom? What would I tell her? Mom, my boyfriend is a psychopath. He installed cameras in my room? She would have dropped everything at her conference, rushed home, and all hell would break loose. The police? And what would I show them? 2 tiny pieces of plastic? No, first, I had to hear it from him. I had to look him in the eye and hear him lie. Or, even worse, hear him justify it. With trembling, disobedient fingers, I picked up my phone. I found his number. My finger hovered over the call button. No. I wouldn't be able to speak. I'd open my mouth and only a scream or a sob would come out. I opened our messenger. Our chat was full of his caring messages. Did you eat? Don't be lonely there, thinking of you. The fakeness of it made me sick again. I typed 3 words. Short. Blunt. I found them, and I hit send, and then I did what I should have done from the start. I took the chair, climbed back on it. I reached into the dark ventilation opening and ripped the camera out, along with the wires that led somewhere deep into the wall. The plastic crunched in my fingers. Then I went to the bookshelf and, not caring about the wood, pried out the second camera with a screwdriver I found in the toolbox. I blinded him. Right now, this second, his screen, wherever he was, went black. The broadcast is over. I clutched those two tiny, still warm electronic eyes in my palm. The evidence of my humiliation, the phone on my desk vibrated. It was him. The phone on the desk kept vibrating, insistent and demanding, like a wounded insect. The name, Leo, I glowed a toxic green on the screen. I stared at it, and every vibration sent a shiver through my body. I couldn't answer. I knew my voice would betray me. That I would either burst into tears or scream. And I didn't want to give him that satisfaction. Not now. I rejected the call. He immediately started typing. I could see that his typing indicator flickering. The message came a few seconds later. It was ridiculously calm. What did you find, Anya? You're scaring me. Rage, cold and sharp like a shard of glass, shot through me. Scaring him? I was scaring him. I took a picture of the two mangled cameras lying in my palm and sent it to him. Without a single word. That was enough. The typing indicator stopped. For a few agonizing seconds, there was silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in his brain as he frantically came up with a new lie, a new explanation, a new manipulation, and then the reply came. And it was worse than any lie. It was a monstrous, twisted truth. I did it for us. For us. The phrase hit me like a slap. He wasn't even trying to deny it. He wasn't apologizing. He was presenting it as some kind of joint project. As something that was supposed to strengthen our connection. My fingers started typing on their own, furiously and fast. For us. You were spying on me. You installed cameras in my bedroom. Are you sick? The reply came almost instantly. He was ready. He had a script for this situation. Anya, calm down and listen. Please. It's not spying. It's caring. You know how dangerous the world is. I just wanted to be sure you were okay when I wasn't around. That no one would break in. That you wouldn't fall or hurt yourself. I could never forgive myself if something happened to you and I didn't know. I read it and couldn't believe my eyes. He was turning reality inside out with such ease, with such skill, that for a second, I almost doubted my own anger. He was talking about safety. About care. He was using the very same words he'd used to chain me to him from the beginning. You're lying. You listened to my private conversations. You knew things you couldn't possibly know. I typed. I wasn't listening. I was just there. I could feel your mood. If I heard anything, it was only because I was worried. I heard you were upset about a test, and I wanted to support you. I heard you didn't want to take the sweater, and I was afraid you'd get cold. Is it a crime to want to protect the person you love? The person you love. He dared to use the word love in this context. My numbness was replaced by a kind of icy calm. It was the clarity that comes in a moment of mortal danger. I realized that arguing with him via text was pointless. He was too good at it. He was a virtuoso of verbal manipulation. Come over, I wrote. One phrase. He probably took it as a sign that I was giving in. That his logic was working. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't do anything stupid. We'll talk it all out, and you'll understand. I love you. That last sentence was like a kill shot. I threw the phone on the bed. I had 15 minutes. 15 minutes to transform myself from a victim into someone who could fight back. I splashed cold water on my face, washing away the traces of tears and panic. I looked at myself in the mirror. A pale, frightened face. Messy hair. I recognized myself, but I felt like I was looking at a stranger. I went back to my room and sat in the armchair. Directly opposite the door. I placed the cameras on the small table next to me. Like exhibits in a museum of twisted art. I didn't know what I would say. I had no plan. I only had one desire, to see his reaction when his mantras stopped working. That he arrived exactly 15 minutes later. A soft knock on the door. Not the doorbell, he always knocked, it was part of his delicate persona. Anya? It's me. Open up. I opened the door in silence. That he was standing on the threshold. The same Leo. Handsome, calm, with an expression of concerned tenderness on his face. He stepped inside and tried to hug me. I recoiled as if from a fire. It was an instinctive movement. Full of disgust, his smile wavered. He saw my face, then his gaze fell on the table with the cameras. He was silent for a second, then sighed heavily, as if I were a difficult child who had just broken a favorite vase. Anya, let's not be dramatic, he said quietly. Dramatic? My voice was hoarse but firm. You call this dramatic? I'll explain. Everything. You've just misunderstood. Explain, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. Explain to me how your love turned into a 24/7 reality show starring me. I'm all ears. He began to speak. And it was the same stream of consciousness as in his messages, only now he reinforced it with body language. He moved closer, tried to take my hand, looked into my eyes. He talked about his anxiety for me, about the cruel world, about how fragile and special I was. He said it was his mistake, but a mistake born of an immense love. If you trusted me, you would understand, he said, his voice rising. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't see this as an insult, but as proof of my feelings. I did this because I couldn't bear the thought of something happening to you. And you're destroying everything. You're acting like a child. It was his signature move. Turn everything upside down. Blame the victim. Make me feel guilty for daring to discover his crime. For not appreciating his care. And the scariest part, for a split second, it almost worked. In the depths of my brainwashed mind, a little worm of doubt stirred. Maybe he's right? Maybe I'm overreacting? But then I looked at the 2 dead cameras on the table. And I remembered the nausea, the shame, and the terror I had felt. Get out, I said. He froze. What? Get out of my house. Right now. Anya, don't be ridiculous. We need to solve this. We don't need to do anything. The only thing you need to do is leave. And never come near me again. You'll regret this, a steeliness entered his voice. You'll be all alone. No one will understand you like I do. No one will take care of you like I do. I don't need that kind of care, I said, opening the front door. Out. He stared at me for a few seconds. His entire savior mask had fallen away. I was looking at a cold, angry, frustrated man whose toy had just been broken. He knew he had lost. At least, this round. He walked past me in silence and left. He didn't look back. Didn't say a word. I slammed the door and locked all the locks. And then I slid down it to the floor, hugging my knees. My body was shaking violently. I had won. I had kicked him out. But I didn't feel like a winner. I felt empty. He disappeared. He didn't call. Didn't text. Just vanished. As if he had never been there. The silence was more terrifying than any of his words. It was crushing. I sat in the empty apartment, in my desecrated room, and I knew that I was absolutely, completely alone. And I had no idea what to do next. After the door closed behind Leo, silence fell. But it wasn't the peaceful, calming silence I had been dreaming of. It was a deafening, vacuum-like silence in which my every breath sounded like a scream. For the first few hours, I just sat on the floor by the door, numb. My brain, overloaded with events, seemed to have gone into emergency mode. It refused to think, to feel, to plan. It just existed, and then the dam broke. It didn't start with tears. It started with anger. A dull, animalistic, irrational anger. I jumped to my feet. I looked at my room, which now seemed like an alien, hostile set. And I started to destroy it. I grabbed the books he had given me from the desk, Camus, Sartre, Nietzsche, and threw them against the wall. The pages scattered, the bindings cracked. Depth. Real literature. It was all just a tool. An instrument he had used to mold me in his own image. I tore his photos in their frames from the shelf. Ripped them into tiny, tiny pieces, as if that could erase him from my memory. The teddy bear, still lying on the floor, flew into the trash. Can I screamed. Not words. Just a disconnected, furious howl erupting from the very depths of my soul. I screamed at the walls, at the ceiling. At the ventilation grate. I screamed from helplessness, from humiliation, from rage at my own blindness. How could I have been such an idiot? How could I have let this happen? The energy of anger ran out as suddenly as it had come, leaving behind a ringing emptiness. And that's when the tears came. I collapsed onto the bed in the middle of the chaos. And sobbed. These weren't the quiet, bitter tears of self-pity. They were convulsive, choking sobs that made my whole body ache. I cried until I ran out of air, until my head split with pain and my eyes swelled into slits. So I cried for my lost innocence. For the fact that my first, I love you, was said to a monster. For the fact that the most intimate moments of my life had been stolen and possibly saved somewhere on a hard drive. The feeling of filth I'd felt when I found the cameras returned with a vengeance. It felt like that filth had seeped under my skin. I went into the shower and scrubbed myself with a loofah until I was red, until it hurt, as if trying to wash away the invisible fingerprints of his gaze. But it didn't help. The filth was on the inside. For the next 2 days, until my mom came back, I lived in a fog. I didn't eat. Barely slept. I wandered the apartment like a ghost. I drew all the curtains and lived in the gloom. Any sound from behind the door made me jump. I was afraid he would come back. Afraid he was standing outside the door, waiting. I taped over the lenses on all my cameras, my laptop, my phone. I stopped trusting technology. I stopped trusting silence. When my mom returned, she found me in my room, sitting on the floor among scattered books and torn photos. I was a shadow of my former self. Seeing her face, full of horror and concern, I finally broke completely. I just handed her the 2 mangled cameras and, stammering, managed to force out one word, Leo. I didn't have to explain anything. She understood. She didn't scream or ask questions. She just sat down next to me on the floor, hugged me, and I burst into tears again, but this time, from relief. I was no longer alone in this nightmare.